Welcome back. Not surprisingly, with Bejahung, if you look in the Dylan Evans Introductory Dictionary to Lacanian Psychoanalysis, you find an entry for this. It's in the B section, Bejahung. In his reply to Jean Hippolyte's commentary on Freud's negation, Lacan describes a primordial act of affirmation, which is logically prior to any act of negation. Logically prior is not the same as temporally prior. We're going to come to that in a moment. Lacan uses Freud's German here, Bejahung, which means affirmation, to denote this primordial affirmation. Primitive, primordial, in the beginning, an affirmation must occur in order for there to be a negation. Now, it could be as simple to illustrate as a disagreement. When you and your roommate, when you and your parent, when you and your friend have a disagreement, you negate each other's positions. I disagree with you, you disagree with me. But Lacan's point would be that in order to have that negation, in order to have that disagreement, there has to be a primitive, antecedent foundation of agreement in place. And that foundation of agreement could be as simple as we agree to disagree in the same language, or we have defined this as a disagreement in which we will express opinions but not trade hands. That could be another opportunity here. The agreement can just be a primitive, tacit understanding, mutual understanding of the rules of engagement. You and your roommate might disagree on whose dish it is that was left in the sink and has been there since 1983. But that doesn't mean that you're going to stab them. There's an agreement that doesn't even need to be spoken here that precedes the disagreement that you're having about the dish. Namely, that we're going to speak about this in English, perhaps. Namely, that it won't result in violence, and so on and so forth. These are primitive Bejahungs, or affirmations, that have to be in place for the negation or the disagreement to occur. It could be as simple as understanding it that way. So when he says that this is logically prior instead of temporally prior, what he means is that when the disagreement starts, it presumes, it has a series of presumptions built into it, one of which is that we're going to speak the same language. If we are starting a disagreement and I suddenly start speaking Mandarin to you, and you're not a Mandarin speaker, and you may not have even known that I speak Mandarin, then suddenly we're going to say, whoa, hold up. Can we talk in English? Or is there another language we can speak that we both speak here? Then you have to go back and rework what is usually assumed in a disagreement, namely that I will address you in a language that you speak. That is a primitive affirmation that has to be in place for my negation of your position in the argument to occur. Reading back to Dylan Evans. Whereas negation concerns what Freud calls the judgment of existence, Bejahung denotes something more fundamental, namely the primordial act of symbolization itself, the inclusion of something in the symbolic universe. Only after a thing has been symbolized at the level of Bejahung can the value of existence be attributed to it or not, negation. So in order for negation to occur, and thus begin the process of repression, the return of the repressed, and all the mechanisms of neurosis, there has to be some primitive symbolization, some inclusion of something into a symbolic universe. And what I would like to suggest is that this is a basic acceptance of the symbolic universe itself. We're going to come back to this and continue discussing it, but that's a first hint. Lacan posits a basic alternative between Bejahung and the psychotic mechanism he calls foreclosure. That's what we were just hearing about. The former designates a primordial inclusion of something in the symbolic, that's our Bejahung, whereas foreclosure is a primordial refusal to include something, the name of the Father, in the symbolic. Now, the name of the Father comes up here at the end. And I think it's worth noting here that the name of the Father is always also the know of the Father. I don't mean know in the sense of knowledge, I mean know in the sense of thou shalt not. Why? It's as simple as Lacan's French, which is never quite that easy. But think of it this way. In French, the word name, nom, sounds exactly the same as the word know, nom. N-O-M sounds the same as N-O-N in French. So when Lacan talks about the name of the Father, he also means the know of the Father. And when he says Father, he doesn't mean bio-dad, he doesn't mean male, he doesn't mean any of that. The position of the Father is a subject position that anyone or anything can occupy. It is whatever serves the function of saying no. And you've heard me say this before. The first word that we learn, no matter what that word is, that's meaning to us is no. And the reason why that is that when a child is introduced to language, they experience that introduction as a negation, as a prohibition, as what Lacan refers to as castration. The introduction into language says, thou shalt not continue crying like a baby, peeing and pooping in your pants, whining when you don't get what you want, babbling, etc. Thou shalt not do all the baby things you used to do at the level of pure need. And instead, you have to start articulating your wants in the field of language. You'll hear the parent tell the child, use your words. Use your words. I can't understand you when you cry like that. That is the child's introduction into the symbolic, and the child experiences that as a refusal, but not in the Lacanian sense of the psychotic, a refusal of their ability to remain a baby. They have to accept that if they're going to get what they want, they have to use words. And here's the difference between the neurotic and the psychotic. The neurotic accepts this alienation, this castration, this prohibition. The neurotic, the typical person, grows up and accepts and does their best to live with the fact that they have to use a language not of their own creation to get what they want with others. And that is precisely what the psychotic denies, forecloses, refuses. In other words, what they do not admit into their symbolic universe is the existence of the symbolic itself. We'll pick up there in a moment.